Hello everybody, it's your boy John back here. I'm gonna do another movie review, and this one's for Starter for 10 from 2006, right? Yeah, 2006. This is a romantic comedy. I'll just read the quick synopsis here that I got for it on IMDb. Set in 1985, working class student Brian Jackson, played by James McAvoy, navigates his first year at Bristol College. And yeah, that's a simple little summary. I don't want to spoil too much for this film because I don't think too many people have seen it. It's got a 6.7 out of 10 on IMDb. In my opinion, it deserves to be a bit higher than that. I think this is a damn good romantic comedy that gets surprisingly dramatic at times. You know, this feels like a very authentic movie. It's very well acted by the entire cast. I'll get to some of my favorites here in a second, but James McAvoy is obviously the lead. He's standout here. He's arguably at his most charming in this movie. He's just he's so likable. He's such a handsome guy, and he's such an easy character to root for in this film. Like you know, he's got one of those motivations to, you know, do what his father sort of always aspired him to do in a sense. You know, the movie starts off with him as a child, and he's watching this game show with his dad, and you know, time jump happens, and it's revealed that his father passed away somehow. I don't think they exactly describe how he dies, but obviously it's this thing that hangs over his character the entire movie, and it made him immediately relatable, at least to me, because, you know, I grew up, my dad died when I was really young too, so immediately I was invested in this character. I was invested in his plight to honor his father's memory, in a sense, with going on the game show, hence why the title is called Starter for 10, like this game show, you get 10 points per answer or what have you. And yeah, I was just really delighted by this movie. I've wanted to see it for a while now because it's got a hell of a great cast. James McAvoy, Alice Eve, she's gorgeous. Rebecca Hall, gorgeous too. You know, everybody in this film does a marvelous job. I guess even James Corden is in this movie, which I didn't realize, because I think he's the character who has the long hair. It says his name is Tone in the movie. His buddies Tone and Spencer's played by Dominic Cooper. Dominic Cooper has a much bigger role in the movie. His character definitely factors into the plot in kind of a way that I thought was predictable. I'm not going to spoil much about this movie, because a lot of the fun stuff in this movie stems from these characters and their interactions and what it all leads to. And yeah, it's just a very, very, I almost want to say delightful movie, but it does get into some darker territories. It's not as dark as the Rotten Tomatoes thing here implied, because the Rotten Tomatoes synopsis, and it's got a great 90% rating from the critics on Rotten Tomatoes. Unfortunately, it's only got a 66 audience score, and again, just like with IMDb, I think it should at least be in the mid-70s, 80s territory at the very least. I think this is a very quality movie that a lot of people should seek out. But it says on Rotten Tomatoes here, for the synopsis, Starter for 10 is a spirited coming-of-age tale that remains charming and witty even as it veers into darker territory. The unique setting of a quiz show makes the film wittier than your average romantic comedy. And yeah, I highly agree with that. But when they mention darker territory, it almost, you know, they almost seemingly imply that this is like gonna turn on its head and stop being a comedy. And throughout the course of the film, it remains, you know, very comedic. It's not slapstick comedy, but there are scenes here that are clearly very comedic. There's almost like this Austin Powers scene involving two characters, and they're trying to hide the nudity, obviously, with camera tricks and the way they film it. And it's very clever. It obviously reminded me very much of the Austin Powers movies and how how they cleverly hid the more raunchy scenes, if you will, of nudity or potential for it or what have you. But yeah, I was just really delighted by this movie. Again, this is one of those movies that I'll bring up that, it's not perfect. It's not a straight 10 out of 10 from me. I'd probably give this like a 9 out of 10. It's so close to that 10 out of 10, though. It's very reminiscent of the movie Pride that I just reviewed, because like that, this takes place in the Margaret Thatcher dominating era. This is a very British movie, obviously, as well. A lot of the actors here, James McAvoy is obviously British. And the reason, really the main reason why I wanted to talk about this movie is because of my boy, Benedict Cumberbatch. Benedict Cumberbatch, I've never seen him funnier in a movie. I've never seen him play this type of role. Usually whenever I see him in a movie, he's got like this overly cocky attitude. And in this, he's got a fraction of that, but he's a lot more cowardly and pathetic. And, as soon as he's introduced, it's just... The film had me rolling on the floor laughing, basically, as soon as they introduce him, because he's got like this terrible haircut. I mean, I should be the one to talk. I'm the one who's bald in here, but he's got this terrible, like almost like slicked back nerd hair, and it starts off where you think he's almost going to be like this antagonist throughout the movie, but his character is just such a twerp that he can't exactly get to that point where you think, even for a second, that this guy's going to be the antagonist. If anything, the antagonist of this film ends up being the Alice Eve character, because, she sort of leads James McAvoy's character on this downward spiral where he's conflicted about, he's in love with her, but then he realizes that she's kind of adult. And I obviously I don't want to spoil what happens, but it leads to sort of like this love triangle thing, and it reminded me very much of me as like a much younger 20-something. I'm 27 now, but it reminded me of like being fresh out of high school, and being deeply attractive to one person or one woman. You think you're in love with her, and then you realize like she's either sleeping around with so many other people. And there's this the best scene in the movie, and it's really tough to pick a best scene, but one of the best scenes in this features James McAvoy and the Alice Eve character, and they're sitting in this like pizza restaurant, and it starts off like as this light romantic scene. It's got a bit of comedy in there with like the waiter being kind of being kind of like out to lunch, like he's too busy like cleaning and wrapping up garbage in the corner to notice that he's got customers in his cleared out dining room. And this scene is definitely one of the standouts, because such an emotional performance on James McAvoy's part here. He is phenomenal. This scene had me tearing up in the movie, obviously because of the relation to the loss of a father, and he's sort of describing what happened. And it's wonderful performance from James McAvoy here. He is exceptional here. And this movie, in some ways, it almost reminds me of something like Trainspotting. Obviously, this is a PG-13 movie. It's not full tilt R-rated. I would almost recommend this movie to kids in a certain extent, because it's very light on the profanity. It is rated PG-13 for sexual content, language, and a scene of drug use, but that drug is marijuana. So whether or not you consider that a drug or not, it's entirely up to you. But I thought this was a very it's surprisingly wholesome. I just looking at the poster, even, it kind of gives you like this happy sense, like, okay, this is a delightful set of actors we got here. Charles Dance pops up in the movie, as Alice Eve's father, and her mother, I forget who her mother is played by, but James McAvoy's mother is played by Catherine Tate, and she's wonderful in the movie. Everybody here in the cast is wonderful. Even James Corden, who I did not recognize, like him nowadays, like he's this, like he's normally got the clean cut, shorter hair, and in this he's got the long, shaggy hair, and I'm like, okay, I like him in this movie. I've never been a fan of James Corden, but I can I can say after this I'm pleasantly surprised by him, pleasantly surprised by everybody in this cast, quite frankly. I think they all do a marvelous job here, and thankfully the critics were very kind to this movie. And yeah. Yeah, so some of the reviews I'm looking at on Rotten Tomatoes here, like, I'm noticing words like cliched, daddy issues, just, yeah, feel good. Yeah, and it's got a hell of a soundtrack, too. One of these critics on here makes a note of the soundtrack. And yeah, I agree. Any movie that starts off playing Motorhead's Ace of Spades within the first 5 minutes, I'm sold. I'm sorry, but I love Motorhead. and yeah, the soundtrack throughout, there's a lot of songs by The Cure. Like basically, almost the remainder of the soundtrack is almost entirely Cure songs from then on. Clearly it's, the soundtrack is very, very 80s era music, obviously. So if you're a big fan of that 80s era of music, then you'll really like this film as well, if not just for that. I like the setting in here. I like the way this film's shot. I love the way it's written. I think this is a clever script, witty dialogue, exceptional characters that have surprising amounts of depth, and they're very relatable. Admittedly, though, there are some characters that I wish they fleshed out more, and I guess that sort of stems from the fact that this movie is only like an hour and a half or an hour and 40 minutes, I think. Yeah, because it says it's an hour 32 here on IMDb, and I think it says, 96 minutes on Rotten Tomatoes. I thought when I watched it last night that it said it was an hour 40, but maybe I was mistaken, but clearly there's some discrepancy between IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes here on the runtime. It's give or take the 4 minutes or what have you. But yeah, I don't know what else to say about this film. I was just really delighted by it. I think this is a must-see for people that are fans of these cast members. Obviously, I think the bigger names here are James McAvoy and Benedict Cumberbatch. And maybe Charles Dance, too, due to the fact that he was big on Game of Thrones and stuff like that. But everybody here just gives it their all, man. And this film, admittedly, it does dive into cliche territories, like was alluded in one of the user reviews that I glanced at there. There's this sort of... I don't even want to call it a subplot because it's just something that happens involving the Dominic Cooper character. And it was something that as soon as he's introduced to like this subplot, if you will, I saw exactly where it was going. And I'm pretty sure anybody watching will know exactly what's going to happen just based off of what we've heard from a certain character in previous scenes. I don't want to be too obvious with what I'm talking about here because I reckon that a lot of people haven't seen this movie. And yeah, what else can I say about this movie? I always feel, whenever I make these videos, I always feel like I'm missing something, which is why I feel like I ramble on for so long. But yeah, generally what makes this film work so well are the performances here. Benedict Cumberbatch is definitely the standout for me. Every time he's on screen, like I just find him so absolutely awesome in this film because I've never seen him play this type of character before. So it's cool to see him play like this character that you know, like doesn't have the ability to stand up for himself in a sense. Like, you know, you can tell that he's got this obsession with being a part of this competition or what have you. And I can't stress enough how much I love Cumberbatch's performance here and everybody involved with this film. And there are so many scenes that stand out to me as some of the best in regards to this genre. This is a very sweet, funny movie. Yes, one of these reviews says it's a perfectly watchable yet far from memorable romantic comedy coming of age story. I disagree with the far from memorable part because I think that months from now I'll still remember certain scenes from this, like the scene involving you know, the two characters that are naked and how they cleverly hide it. That scene alone, it had me cracking up. There are so many laughs to be had with this film, and it's so damn charming with such a great soundtrack and a wonderful cast of characters and performers alike. And yeah, what wonderful direction, wonderful script. and that's it, you guys. I really wanted to talk about this movie with you. I hope you seek it out if you haven't watched it, and if you have, maybe give it another shot, because it's one of those movies that I could see myself rewatching and really coming to appreciate it a lot more, especially when watching it with friends or family. You know, it is, like I said, PG-13, so maybe be weary of who you show it to. But, you know, I don't remember them saying the F word. I don't even remember them saying something like shit in this movie or whatnot. Maybe they say it like once, but yeah, this film feels very family friendly, even though it's got certain scenes that allude to like raunchier subject matter. Like at one point, like there's this scene involving this tub that I will not spoil as well, because I found that to be a extremely funny movie. It's involving the James McAvoy character. He sort of walks into the washroom and blammo, like it's it's like yeah, so I won't spoil that. Highly recommend this movie to you guys. I'd give it a 9 out of 10. I think this is a wonderful movie that I think will only get better with time. Oh yeah, one thing I almost forgot to mention. So Rebecca Hall's in this, and she's wonderful. However, there's one thing. Now, you know, I don't blame the filmmakers for this. I don't blame the writers. But her character's name is Rebecca Epstein. Yeah. As soon as she said what the hell her last name was, I sort of leaned back on the couch here and I was just like, oh no, oh no. And yeah, that had me sort of intrigued. You know, obviously we know what's going on with Epstein or Epstein, whatever that bugger's name is. And yeah, that's kind of a shame, you know, because she's obviously a very likable character, and she's a romantic interest, obviously, for James McAvoy in this film as well. There's like this little love triangle going on. And yeah, so other than that, I'm happy I remembered to mention that, because that sort of took me aback when I was first watching this. But yeah, that's not a detriment on this film. It's just sort of a thing that's, I guess, sort of unfortunate. It's like, oh no, your name happens to be this, so that's unfortunate. But anyhow, you guys, check this movie out. I'd highly recommend it, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care, everybody.